black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody knows his bright red van. All his friends will smile as he waves to greet them. Maybe
Pat was gutted. He was particularly bitter when he heard that top executive pay rises were on the cards after the show was cut. The new Fly on the Wall documentary was a success, and Pat knew it was the end. There was hope when the BBC lost yet another sporting event, cricket, to Channel 4. Still, no money became available. Mrs. Goggins, like many others in the village, felt it was a tragedy and considered retiring. The effect on society was enormous. Would Greendale ever be the same again? Despite the changes in the village, Pat's job, for a few years anyway, was like it was before. He continued to serve his community and even got shortlisted for a promotion. Sadly, a young graduate beat him to the post, but Pat didn't care. He gave up wearing his glasses and discovered contact lenses. It meant he could participate in contact sports and join the local soccer side Greendale United. They won their league for the first time in 43 years, and Pat received the Club Man of the Year award. Pat thought life was good and felt things were turning out nicely. Plans to revolutionize transport around the area as part of the New Britain campaign meant that Pat was now driving an electric van. There were no more tight country roads with humped-backed bridges but dual carriageways with articulated lorries driving through the village. His time on the rounds was cut dramatically. However, the new roads posed a problem. Poor Lucy Selby got knocked down at traffic lights on the way to school. It was believed that an animal activist group had released thousands of mink into the village, and a car hit her trying to avoid hitting the animals. Pat found things were changing for the worse. He was reprimanded by the post office for proclaiming to the local children who were firing snowballs during the deep snow, "Oh, you young monkeys." He was told that this was politically incorrect and suggestive. After this incident, Pat broke his leg while playing football. It was a horrific injury. The waiting list for an operation on the NHS was a month, so it was many months before he returned to work. Pat was not the only one in the current climate having a hard time. Ted Glenn, a recognized Nazi and member of illegal groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, was worried about the rise in colored people in the area and how mixed and diverse the community of Greendale was becoming. His xenophobia created tensions within the community, and many people disappeared without a trace. The local police refused to recognize the problem. He also objected very strongly to Miss Hubbard, who had recently become the first woman priest in the area. Reverend Timms lost his job after allegations he had abused children in his care. Ted eventually took early retirement due to repetitive strain injury incurred from mending the water pump regularly. Peter Fogg found his livelihood threatened. The year before, Peter decided that growing genetically altered crops would produce a better yield and increase profits. Sadly, he became a victim of abuse, and groups such as Friends of the Earth kept protesting outside his house, and he was forced to flee. Monsanto had temporarily paid to house him in the local B&B with police protection. George Lancaster was another. He gave up his former job to become a safety inspector in the newly built nuclear power station. Unfortunately, after numerous near meltdowns due to the millennium bug, the new evolution of fish in the local radioactive stream, and the increase in cancer in newborn babies, he decided he was not cut out for the job and returned to the farm to raise award-winning chickens. Despite the hardships endured by the community, not everyone was worse off. Granny Dryden discovered the wonder of liposuction and plastic surgery. She left the village to go to California after being offered a small part in a low-budget porn film. The film later appeared in the local video store, and little Charlie Pringle saw it despite being many years underage. He began to watch violent films too and went off the rails. It was a downhill trend. He gave up wearing his bow tie in the street and was seen wearing an Adidas jacket and Kappa trousers. He was blamed for starting a new fashion trend in the village. He was last seen driving around the village in a yellow Nova, which he apparently stole from the nearest town of Pincaster. Recently he was jailed for bank robbery and burglary. Pat, meanwhile, was in more bother. He accused a local hen many years back of stealing his car keys. The farmer who owned the hen decided he would take Pat to court. It took all those years for the jury to make a good decision, using taxpayers' money, and rule Pat was in the wrong. Pat lost his hard-working and honest reputation as he wrongfully accused the poor hen without adequate evidence to support his claim. He was forced to compensate the farmer for paying for the hen to be counseled so it would receive emotional support on an ongoing basis. To make matters worse, the story got to the press, and he appeared not only in the local Pincaster Gazette but also in the Sun and was ridiculed. What was the world coming to? He thought. Pat then turned to drink. It was never a problem before when his local pub was only open until 11. Still, new licensing laws were introduced, and he spent more time there than at home. He also started to drink on the job, as shown below in the post office. Pat was lonely. He didn't even have Jess to accompany him on his rounds. The post office released a statement to him saying, with the recent anxiety in the public domain concerning widespread infection through disease passed on from animals, we think it best that animals of any kind should be prevented from entering the postal van or coming into contact with letters or parcels to minimize the possible risk of cross-infection and risking the local community leading to a nationwide epidemic. Jess was becoming a problem. He could no longer accompany Pat on the rounds, and Pat's drinking habit meant he had less money to spend on food for the cat. Pat was told by the vet that Jess needed more quality food and he shouldn't feed him rabbit pie, Jess's favorite dish, as it didn't contain the RDA of essential vitamins. Pat had to talk to someone and continued to have tea with Mrs. Thompson. It turned into an affair, and Mrs. Thompson considered moving in with Pat. Sadly for Pat, Mrs. Thompson felt she couldn't leave her husband Alf, but things didn't end there. It turned out that Mrs. Thompson was pregnant. Pat was forced to pay maintenance once the child was born. Pat was broke. His union recommended he take industrial action over plans for pay cuts, but Pat couldn't afford to. He lost his membership and lost his pension. The final straw came when Mrs. Goggins was sacked in the post office and replaced by an automated parcel wrapper. He heard that his van would be equipped with a satellite navigation system, so there would be no need for a driver. It was rumored that the design for the truck evolved from Ted Glenn, and he had made millions. Pat couldn't take it anymore. He thought Ted was his friend. The job Pat once knew had changed too much. He no longer knew his role. Eventually, letter mail was abolished due to optical communications' vast exchange of information. He quit his beloved job. Who would pay the bills now? Without a job, he had nothing. How could he fund his drinking habit? Pat signed on the dole, and he was offered help. A new government-run work help scheme, the New Deal, put Pat on a local building site. Still, he failed to grasp the technique of layering bricks, thus leading to 4 years of unemployment on the streets. His house was repossessed, and Jess had run away. He kept himself going by begging outside the now disused post office and a newly built state-of-the-art hospital built by the government due to a recent overdue cash injection into the health service. He also dealt in black market goods that were in demand, such as Viagra and pirated PlayStation games. This provided him with enough food and drink to survive. However, new proposals were brought in by the government about immigrants, which meant Greendale became a safe haven, and there were more people on the streets. Thus Pat's takings from begging decreased. Alas, Pat turned to racketeer and got involved in paramilitary-style beatings. In the end, he got caught on CCTV running away from a crime scene and was convicted for assault and other crimes. He went down for life. In prison, he became a victim of intimidation due to his paramilitary links and became clinically depressed. Prozac helped him through the first year, but things got worse. His closest friend, who belonged to a paramilitary organization, was shot while in prison. Prozac was no longer available to him due to its harmful effects on the heart, and he turned to soft drugs. Pat eventually died of rather tragic heroin addiction.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody knows his bright red van.